New iCave, who dis? On today's Apple Daily, we are talking about new Beats Buds spotted on LeBron James. We are talking about A15 going into production at TSMC, and Apple is seeking a crypto and alternative currencies manager. Let's get into that.
This video is supported by NordPass, letting you store all of your passwords in one place, organise your logins and private notes in a secure password vault, and access it all with a single master password. And with NordPass's data breach scanner, you can find out if your online account or credit card information has been leaked. Right now, NordPass has their spring forward sale too until June the 1st, 2021, so my audience can get 70% off NordPass at nordpass.com/iCave or use the code iCave. Plus, you'll get an additional month of NordPass for free. Thank you to NordPass for sponsoring this video.
So first of all, apologies that the sound is probably a little bit janky today. I'm sat in a hotel room, I'm using my iPhone. We don't have external mics and stuff like that. There's probably a bit of echo in here in comparison to normal. So apologies, but this is what we have. I'm working away from home today. But first of all, we have LeBron James has been spotted in the wild using new Beats Studio Buds, which have not been released yet. This is from his Instagram, by all accounts, and it's certainly interesting that we're seeing these in the wild before we've actually got the full release of them. Not sure when those will be coming, because Beats don't tend to be released at Apple events. They tend to be kind of the background things that don't get as much coverage from Apple, but we're expecting them to be launched in red, black and white options, which is quite nice. They look a lot like the AirPods Pro that we were expecting, so it could be that some wires got crossed behind the scenes with production because it was being made for Apple. They were kind of just assumed to be the new AirPods Pro without the stems, so we don't know exactly what's going on with that just yet, but we will find out, I'm sure, very soon, now that LeBron is wearing them in public. Next up, TSMC has begun production of Apple's A15 chips. These are still going to be on the 5nm process, but using an improved version of the node, which will give better efficiency and hopefully also better performance. In general, Apple switches nodes every other year, and so yeah, this is what we would be expecting. Timing-wise, this also lines up, obviously the early versions of these chips that are coming off the line will be the ones used by Apple in terms of their testing to make sure that everything works as expected, ready for those new phones that will be coming out, hopefully in September this year. It looks like there is no delays as well compared to last year when we didn't get iPhones until October, and in fact, in some cases, into November. Still unclear as to whether this is going to be called the iPhone 13 or the iPhone 12s. I would prefer it to be 13, but if Apple wants to be funny about the number 13, then maybe they won't. The other option potentially would be because the Macs are now going down the line of being known by their processors inside. So for example, I use the MacMini M1, that's what everyone kind of refers to it as. Perhaps the iPhone this year could be called the iPhone A15. Who knows? Also, it looks like Apple is about to overtake Samsung in terms of who is buying the most AMOLED displays. So the fact that Apple is using these in all of their iPhone models, and just the sheer scale of phones that Apple sells in those models means that they are overtaking Samsung. And of course, we're expecting the next version of the iPhone to come with those 120Hz refresh rate screens with variable refresh rate, specifically on the Pro models. Before we move on to our last main story as well, I did notice that Amazon has bought MGM, or is at least in the process of doing so. Obviously, it's going to have to go through a lot of regulatory approvals and that kind of thing, but this is something that I pitched in the past as something that Apple maybe could have done, because we knew that MGM was potentially going to be going up for sale, and we knew that Apple wanted to bolster their back catalogue. However, it seems that Apple, in almost all cases, Snoopy being the particular kind of exception to this, only wants to kind of put their own content or unique brand new content onto their platform. They don't seem to be that interested in taking on a back catalogue in the way that Netflix and the others have. So Amazon Prime has spent $8.5 billion to acquire the back catalogue of MGM, and also they will then, I believe, have the rights to make all of the James Bond movies going forward. And Apple is actively looking for someone to lead alternative payments, is how this is being pitched. So it could be crypto, it could be maybe allowing Apple Wallet to become a crypto wallet, custodial or non-custodial, in terms of NFTs, all that kind of thing. There's a huge amount of stuff going on in this space right now, so it's a very interesting space. It's not surprising that Apple wants to get involved and at least have some sort of a say in this kind of conversation. And back in 2019, the Apple Pay vice president, Jennifer Bailey, did say that it was a very interesting space and Apple is looking at the way that it develops for the future. So if you happen to be a cryptocurrency expert, like most people on the internet appear to be these days, get in touch with Apple. You can have a job. And if you do, look after me if you found out about it because of me. As always, we're going to get into your iCave answers next, so let's get into that. First of all, oFile asks, there is no audio jack on John processor MacMini renders. Why Brave again? Now, I'm hoping that this is just an omission because MacMini has a horrendous internal speaker. I can't imagine that the plan is for it to have no audio output options unless they're going to do something crazy with the power brick, because having seen this render that John has put out for the new Mac Minis, it does have the magnetic attachment, which means that they could potentially put some sort of connectivity on the power brick, but Ethernet is already on the Mac Mini itself, so maybe there'll be a headphone port on there, or maybe this is some kind of a weird version that doesn't use anything else. Now, the other option is that you have got the HDMI port on there, which is a video and audio output device, but I can't imagine that the majority of people would be happy with that, especially with Apple bringing lossless. It makes more sense to have that audio jack right there. I don't know why it's not there. I hope it's not a bravery thing, because on the desktop, I think it is more important than it is on a phone. Unless Apple has some sort of awesome external speaker that is going to have no Bluetooth lag. And next up, again from oFile, iCave answers, in fact, iCloud answers. iCave answers, does the 8/7 core 24-inch iMac only have one cooling fan for the logic board? Yes, this is something we've touched on in the past. The 7-core GPU version of the iMac only has a single fan on its logic board, whereas the 8-core version has two, which is just very strange because the physical hardware is the same in both of those chips. So why they've left that other fan out is really strange to me. Maybe those fans are super expensive. I'm not quite sure. But that is the case right now. I don't think it's going to make a huge difference in terms of performance. I think one fan would probably be enough. And remember, we've got MacBook Airs out there that have no fans whatsoever on the boards. So maybe it doesn't matter. But if it doesn't matter, why did they put two in the other one? It's honestly, I don't really know. And until some more kind of sustained testing has been done in the wild, I'm probably thinking that Max Tech is going to be the ones that come out and let us know what difference it really makes. Alan B Unboxings and News asks, will Apple announce the last iPod Touch 8th generation at WWDC 21? Now, as we've mentioned already, there have been rumours about this new iPod Touch. I'm not sure where those rumours have originated from. I've seen the renders going around. I don't know. I can't imagine that a WWDC would be the place to launch an iPod Touch, but maybe. The only thing that, as I've said in the past, the only thing that I think makes sense for this iPod Touch is if it is designed to be natively supporting Apple's new lossless codecs over the wire through a headphone port. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's got a cool DAC built into it. If it is even a real product, that would be the only reason. Like, iPod was always a music device. It was always about music, and it was always a really good device for music. And if Apple was to bring their lossless and their spatial audio to something like that, that would be fairly compelling, I think, especially if they can keep the price reasonably low. Bruce Grubb asks, how do people pull off having 5 to 6 working monitors, several videos of this on YouTube, connected to their M1 Mac Mini? Regardless of the method, there is no way to increase the base video throughput of the M1. If the M1 is able to push that many pixels, then why did Apple limit it to 2 monitors at best? Have you looked at the workaround people have come up with to allow 2007 to 2013 iMacs to work as monitors for the M1 Max? Okay, let's address the second part first. So the 2007 to 2013 iMacs, because they only had the 2560 by 1440 displays, they had something called target display mode built in. Now, That was removed in some of the later versions where you couldn't use them as a monitor anymore, mainly because when the 5K iMacs came out, it wasn't possible because the amount of bandwidth that you would need to get it over a Thunderbolt cable wasn't there at the time, because Apple had to build their own custom timing controllers and things for those displays. Now, the possibility, I would guess, is that people have just rolled back to earlier versions of macOS, and that is how they've done it and used target display mode. The other option would be that you could actually put in a display controller board by physically hacking the hardware and just having an HDMI port or mini display port that goes directly into it. In terms of the multi-monitor support, it's something called display... It's not called display port, it's called display adapter, I think. And as far as I understand it, you can have multiple panels, but they're all lower resolution, so you're basically splitting what would be a 4K onto four 1080p displays, if that makes sense. So you're kind of tiling it out and then placing onto different displays. That's why you're not pushing more pixels, you're just pushing it onto different things. They also tend to be fairly unresponsive, they're not particularly smooth to use, and the other option is to use them as basically USB displays. They just really hit your system a lot harder. It's not a good experience, it's not a good idea. You can actually have 3 displays running natively on the Mac Mini, but it would be one over USB-C or Thunderbolt, one over HDMI, and then you can use an iPad as a sidecar. But remember that you can have a 4K display and a 6K display running off of the Mac Mini natively. So there is plenty of screen real estate to go around. I think using 2 larger 4K displays, like I use a large 4K display at home and a 1080p display, both at 40 inches. If you had 2 40-inch 4K displays, you have got masses of real estate. I don't think there's any reason that people need to have a stupid amount of monitors just for the sake of I can run more monitors. Kevin Slegg asks, do you think we should take anything from the fact that the latest WWDC graphic appears to show 3 people sitting in front of black and not space grey laptops? And I think that all 3 seem to be lit by different colours, orange, yellow and blue, plus the multicolours reflected in the glasses. Could this mean that multiple colours will be offered in the Pro machines, or could it mean that the revised MacBook Air / MacBook could also be announced? So I'm not 100% sure on that. It looks very much like it's a lighting thing and not actually necessarily matte black MacBooks. If they're matte black, I will be very, very happy, because matte black everything is the coolest way, because we've been told this by Marquez, and there's no point in arguing with him. He knows what he's talking about. In terms of the different colours lighting people up, I mean, that's going to be purely from the displays. The original strapline, I think, for WWDC was Glow and Behold, so that just fits perfectly with that anyway. Wouldn't worry too much about that. I do hope that we get multiple colours in the Pro laptops as well. I don't think we should be just limited to grey if you're a Pro, and you can get lovely colours, and you can just get lovely colours if you want to have a cheaper laptop. I think that's a silly idea. But in terms of the new MacBook Air or MacBook coming out at WWDC, doesn't really make sense, because they'd be putting an M1 into that. They're not going to be putting an X series processor into that model, and the M2 ain't going to be ready until later this year. And Nitrex asks, iCave answers, what should we expect regarding battery life on the new MacBook Pro models? I've heard 23 hours for the 14-inch and 30 hours on the 16-inch. However, these seem way too good to be true, considering the higher performance chip and the 14-inch, a very similar chassis to the 13-inch model. Yeah, I think we touched on this yesterday, unless I've just plugged the same question into this show. Apologies if I have. But no, that makes all the sense in the world to me, to be honest. The batteries are going to be bigger in these because, A, it's a bigger chassis. We know that the boards are smaller. We know that this time they're designing the chassis specifically for these laptops as well. So they're not kind of leaving legacy space for stuff that isn't going to be there, like they may have done with the original MacBook Pro 13-inch. They're taking away the OLED touch bar, which will also remove some of the power. They're also not going to have the extra controller for that. There's quite a lot of stuff that's coming out. Also, they're still going to have the efficiency cores there, albeit 2 rather than 4. But that means you've only got 2 to power when you don't need your high-performance cores. And if those high-performance cores only have to kick in when you're doing rendering or something very demanding, then that's why it's going to be very good battery life, because Apple is great at doing battery life. The other thing that will affect this is if Rosetta does go away sooner than expected, that will really help battery life because Rosetta is a huge battery hog in comparison to native apps. So hopefully Apple is going to put an end date on Rosetta so that the developers have a real incentive to actually get their fingers out and prepare their apps to run natively. Hopefully that all makes sense. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm going to get onto editing this here in my hotel room because I brought my MacMini with me, and that's a much better experience than trying to do it on my phone. See you all on tomorrow's show. Thanks.